There we go. There we are, Trey.
What is it?
Another week. We're here. We're live. We got a lot of people on already too, by the way.
We do. We seem to be getting just a couple more every week.
Yeah. Yeah. We're I told you we're like ESPN now, man. Just every night. Just shows talking about fishing.
We should have like a top 10. Like, you know how ESPN has a
Oh, you know what? That's a
top
great
10 kayak catches of like,
we're gonna have our own thing, like maybe top 7. Like
right.
top 7 highlights. And one time we can do like blooper stuff too. But tonight's kind of special. We got Jeff Little. We want to talk a little bit about what's going on here. It's episode 5. Here in Nebraska, the ice went from I think like 8 inches to almost nothing today. And so hopefully I'll get out tomorrow before the wind hits from the north. We got a front coming through. And Trey, if it does hit you guys, it'll be in probably late afternoon or evening tomorrow.
So, yeah, the weather's supposed to be nice. I am too, right here. Tanny Como got the Tanny Moyak Tanny 20 starting on Saturday.
Yeah.
Staying at Edgewater Beach Resort. And I would be doing an injustice if I didn't get, Josh. This is Josh, not Josh Booth, but Josh Steelman from Steelman Rentals at Edgewater Resort. Man, if you guys are looking to come to Tanny Como to trout fish, brown fish, looking for that big bass, I promise you, Edgewater Resort is the place to stay. You can get a hold of me on Facebook, and I give you guys that link. But it should be awesome. We got 19 of the elite qualifiers out of Moyak getting it on here Saturday just to kind of battle it out. It should be really cool. So I'm excited.
Good luck in that. And then we want to get a shout out to our sponsors, Little Miami Outfitters up in the right hand corner there, KBF and Tourney X. These guys have helped us out this year to put these on, and this is one of many episodes. We've got some more coming up yet. And I'll probably be on the road like you, Trey, on some of these because I start the trek to the Bassmaster National Championship
coming up, dude. Are you excited?
Oh yeah. Well, all my fishing poles just moved. They just moved on their own, so they're excited.
Oh I heard something.
That was my fishing. They just moved. I don't even know why.
We know you got energy going through your. See, it's not the Nico. You got something going on with your rods, man.
I don't know.
Some witchcraft stuff going on, Marty Hughes.
So we're gonna bring Jeff on here, and let's have some fun and talk about his story, man. Because this guy's a legend. I mean, from Maryland to Pennsylvania, all that area up there, but he's been all over the place. And
a 22-inch smallmouth is a small smallmouth for this guy. This dude is a smallmouth hammer.
Yeah, and the other thing is he's a great teacher, man. He's helped a lot of people through the years, with the safety, with how to paddle, with how to just catch fish. So let's get him on here and see where we're going here. Let's see. There he is, Jeff Little, guys. And we don't
Marty. Hey, Trey.
We should have had a crowd applause for you. Doggone it, missed it. Doggone it. So we're glad to have you on here, Jeff. And we have some comments. Yeah, we have comments already. Who's ready to get this party? Thomas Michael Siebold. Do you know him?
I do. Yep.
Okay. Cool. And then Corey Whitchurch is on with us. So there'll be quite a few people on here, it looks like. But Jeff, thanks for being here. Now, we're not going in any particular order of our legends, that are coming on here. But we do want to be able to tell this story, like I said before, one person at a time. And a lot of people don't know these stories. And so I think it's good that we get them out there. And hopefully we're going to have these all recorded. And hopefully someday somebody's going to write about it, whether it's me or somebody else. And then at least get the history out there, because we're getting to that point where on the average of about 30 year-ish in there with most of these legends and that, that realm. And then we'll progress down the timeline, But right now,
it's a very, very cool project.
Yeah, thanks. And it is a lot of work to put it on. But the thing is like you're like the poster child for many magazines as well. We're going to show that here a little later. And you've written a lot of articles. You've done a lot of videos. You've done a lot of just general kayaking. a lot of the safety things that are happening today, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, too. But let's first of all, let's find out where you found your love for fishing. And oh, that's well, first let's go back. Who are you, Jeff?
Jeff Little grew up in Rockville, Maryland, suburb of DC, and you asked about like where fishing started for me. Um, I won't tell you that I had a particular um, singular mentor,
Yeah.
and I think that is a sort of important thing. Is I didn't have one person. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's my uncle." I owe it all to my uncle. He got me started, or my dad, or my grandpa, or um, where I got fishing is sort of a mystery, in that like nobody in the family really knows that hey, it came from here. Um, I do remember very early on. One of my earliest fishing memories is my mom took my she was the Cub Scout den leader and took my brother, who's 4 years older, his group of kids. But because I was,
Hmm.
I wasn't part of that yet, we went to Clopper Lake in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and it was just catching bluegill. But like no one was catching anything, and I kind of wanted in, but I was a little brother. I was like, let me try. And I kept getting pushed away. And eventually they lost interest because they didn't catch anything. And at some point they wandered off to the playground, and I'm like, cool, I got rods. And I just figured it out. And like
Yeah.
before too long, like some of the kids, they're all 4 years older than me, starts, hey, Brian, it was my older brother, your brother's catching them. Like, come check it out. And that's where it kind of caught for me. And that was sort of my thing. And I was into it. Wherever we would go, I'd say, can I fish there? And you
Hmm.
know, I can't credit a singular mentor. I had mentors from many different directions, and I really do credit my mother for
Hmm.
that. And she did what all good parents do, which is to expose your kids to lots of different things, figure out what they have an affinity for, what they enjoy,
Hmm.
and facilitate that as much as possible. Marty, you and I were talking before. You
Hmm.
had some basketball here recently,
Yeah.
and my kids' passion is basketball, and
Yeah.
we facilitated that with AAU, and as much help as we can get them to really just thoroughly enjoy that. My mom did that for me for
Yeah.
fishing. She
Yeah.
would drive me anywhere to go fishing.
Hmm.
When I was a little guy, I didn't get um, Cadbury eggs in my Easter basket. I got you know, the Poppin' B3 top water plug with a little cutout of the abdomen with a note from the Easter Bunny that it
Sure.
said, "Hey, just cast it out there, wait, and don't move it. Wait till all the rings are gone from the pond, and then give it three good pops."
Huh.
And that was excellent advice.
Wow.
That caught largemouth bass out of the neighborhood ponds and farm ponds where I could
Yeah.
ride my bike. And I mean, that's the sort of thing that I got thanks to mom. Um,
Nice. Nice.
she put me in front of different mentors in Trout Unlimited, and we had the Rockville Trading Post, which was a really great you know mom and pop tackle shop and hunting place in Rockville, and I was there a lot, taking my however I'd earn money, raking leaves or whatever, and like buying bulk soft plastics out of those little, you know,
Hmm.
baking aluminum baking tins that you would take to the register and they'd weigh it. And I don't
I've
know,
never
good
seen
memories from fishing. And mom was for sure the one who facilitated that.
Nice. Now, was this just outside of Washington D.C. area?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Wow.
Rockville, the western side of Montgomery County, which is largely cookie cutter, houses, that suburbia, but the neighborhood we grew up in was not so much that. It was an older neighborhood that I grew up in the house that my dad had been in since he was 10. and that whole neighborhood had been a old dairy farm, so they had ponds every 3 to 5 acres for fire suppression, and those are just neighborhood ponds, which are great largemouth fishing. And at some point, I explored a lot on my bike and figured out that I could ride to the Potomac River,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to Swain's Lock, which we did a lot in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, and I knew
Mm-hmm.
paddling, the canoe on the C&O Canal, and then I would rent a canoe there. And this is fast forwarding a good bit into high school, where I would rent the canoe there and paddle up the watered portion of the C&O Canal,
Mm-hmm.
drag it over the bank, and get in the Potomac River and float back down. And back then, mostly, I did a lot of catfishing back then. It wasn't, through high school, it was some bass fishing. It was mostly pond bass fishing, but on the river, we catch some smallmouth on rooster tails, but mostly we were after the channel cats.
Hmm.
And
How far was that? How far were you from Pulaski, Maryland?
uh,
What kind of ways?
I'd have to look it up.
Okay. I was
Yeah,
gonna say my mom is from Maryland originally,
yeah,
and my dad lived there. But it's ironic that I'm understanding where you're at because of what you're saying, and that I have family out there as well. So it's kind of cool. So you canoe? Did you use a boat ever? Did you use a boat as a kid?
no, it
Just
was
bank?
a 17-foot aluminum Grumman, and I would canoe that I would take out. That at some point became the family, passed down from somebody, and that's when I got my driver's license, and eventually got a pickup truck. It wasn't until college I was in a pickup truck, but we would also rooftop it on a Safari GMC Safari minivan, and take it different places. But I was through Boy Scouts, and I did the high adventure base thing. Went up to the northern part of Maine. It was called Matagamon, and we went up there for
Hmm.
I think it was a 10-day trip. And I didn't fish so much then. Not on that trip. I wasn't part of a fishing group, but that part of being in wilderness for an extended period of time, I kind of repeated that, especially when I got into kayak fishing. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, like it was canoeing. Like I started in a canoe, and then
Mhm.
I in college I would take my buddies, and we would take the weekend, go up and camp on the islands on the Potomac. And at some point we were on like a long weekend 3-day trip, and I was in that canoe, and a buddy of mine who was a um, reception pirouette, so a skirted kayak, a creek boat for back then. And I'm catching them on like the little Zara puppies, just top water,
Hmm.
walking the dog behind the rocks in the middle of the river, and they're smashing it pretty good. And I turned to my buddy Mark Granger, and I'm like, "Hey, Mark, here," and I just want to hand him a ride because I got like 3 of them lined up on the canoe in front of me. He's like, "No, I'm good." I'm like, "No, man, dude, this is amazing. You gotta." He's like, "All right," and he grabs it, and he catches a couple smallmouth and is giggling and having fun.
Mhm.
And it hit me in the moment like, huh, he's it's not windy now, but I've been out here days where it's just like crazy windy, and it was horrible being soloing a 17-foot canoe and being blown around.
Mhm.
And that was the first time it kind of clicked, and I'm like, kayak, might need to get a kayak. And I
So
didn't do it. I didn't do it for another year and a half.
what
And
what time period is this then?
it would have been 96, 97.
Okay.
And then which is funny, like the first person that I saw kayak fishing is someone I forced it upon. Said, "Here, do this."
All right.
And
Wow.
it kind of sat in the back of my mind until I want to say it was 98 that I was in that canoe. It was a real windy March day. Like we're about to have weather here like that in a few days.
Yeah.
That it was just like I was just getting beat up out there. I couldn't even float downstream
Yeah.
because it was blowing me upstream, and I was like, all right, I got to do the kayak thing. And I bought an Old Town Loon 138,
Oh, wow.
and promptly took it out and knew I needed a I needed someone to run shuttle. And here comes mom again. I'm like, hey mom, I want to go up to Harper's Ferry. Can you shuttle me? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, here, just, and I'm like, can you, like, you remember how to drive a stick? And I had a 87 GMC Sierra 1500 with a stick. And she's like, it's been a while, but I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I know I went through Whitehorse Rapid, and it was like the day that I bought this thing, and I went through this wave train, just disappearing in between waves, and she's like at the end, like this is just me saying I want to go take this thing out and figure it out, and you're not real happy with me because I disappeared from view like 5 times in whitewater, and but that was the beginning of it. And I did flip it within a month and lost a bunch of gear and popped up and said, all right, I need an education. And I started taking paddling classes. I took a whitewater class, and they're like, you're in the wrong boat. I'm like, what do you mean? This is my boat. This is what I got. They're like, well, if you want to do whitewater, you're an Old Town Loon 138 that has this cockpit that's way open. Like you need a skirted boat if you're going to do whitewater. I'm like, well, I'm a fish out of it. But I want to learn these, learn to paddle it and not flip it. That's what I want to do. I'm like, all right, well, you should look at another boat. And I got a Perception Access, which was a skirted. It was a very high volume creek boat.
Yeah.
And I did the whitewater classes, and I did DC Canoe Cruisers, and which was a canoeing kayaking club in DC, and took Swiftwater Rescue. And I had been taking people out. I took my fraternity brothers and other friends, and was like, this is the best thing ever. Like fishing out of a kayak is incredibly, like, you got to come do this. And I would usually put them in the Loon, and I'd be in the Access, or we'd flip back and forth. And we did, my buddy Rob Carey and I did it was going to be longer, but it ended up being 6.5 days on the Upper Potomac. We went from Paw Paw, West Virginia, and Dad did the shuttle this time. Left the truck in Williamsport, Maryland, so it's close to 70 river miles. And we just floated and camped wherever, and brought all our stuff with us. And somewhere along that trip, there was a hypothermia story where that is my hypothermia story, where I really, both of us in the middle of the night, and it had poured down rain and everything was soaked, and just like we were in a bad way. Like we didn't have the right gear. It had rained and everything was soaked, and we were at the point where neither one of us were functional, and we had tried to start a fire that night and just never got it going. And like 2:30 in the morning, both of us agreed, like, hey, we have to try, because we're in trouble here. But I mean, that's the kind of adventures you have when you're new to doing this sort of thing, and
now,
you don't know any better.
Right. And now I want to go back, because I want to kind of relate this to, because we started about the same time.
Okay.
And my first boat was a Zodiac with a little 5 horsepower motor, and my dad would put it in the trunk of his Cadillac, fold it up. I'd take it out at San Diego Bay, inflate it, and take my 5 horse and go around the bay there and fish, all day. And he'd come back, pick me up at night. And I took off near Shelter Island, if you know where that's at down there.
Yep.
Anyway, I had that. But then when I moved to Nebraska, I just fished from the bank for a long time. And then I had a boat for a while. But surprisingly, I believe an Old Town otter
Yes.
that had the smaller hole in it.
Yes.
Okay, and it was
I
green.
bought before my wife was my wife, when she
Yeah,
was my girlfriend, I
yeah.
bought her an otter,
Okay,
a
and
red one.
were they 8 foot or 10 foot? I can't remember.
I don't think it was 10.
Yeah, I think it was
She
8.
she liked it because of the seat back.
Okay, it had a little seat in it, but
Hmm.
my legs would fall asleep in it because
Yeah.
it was so cramped. But here's the thing, though, is that I bought it on eBay for $265. I never took a picture of it. I wish I would have. I didn't, back then I didn't think about taking pictures or anything.
Yeah.
But so I take it out, and this is no kidding. I have the book in my library. I bought a book on how to do an Eskimo roll off eBay,
Yeah.
and I bought a nose plug
Yeah.
because I thought I was going to be upside down trapped in this kayak.
Yep.
And that's still the perception today people have, don't they?
Yeah.
That they're going to tip over. Well, anyway, I started out, got my life jacket on, and I was about 5 feet from shore the whole time, and I was teetering and stuff, kind of getting used to it. I've never tipped, believe it or not, in all these 29 years, whatever it's been. And then, believe it or not, we have something in common because my next kayak was the Perception Caster.
Nice.
No, I take that back. I'm sorry. It was a Wilderness 135.
Okay.
And then I got the Perception Caster. You remember that one?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just didn't even interrupt your story, but I wanted to talk about the commonality. Here I am in Nebraska doing the same thing, not knowing who Jeff Little is.
Right.
You're doing the same thing. You're being adventurous. How many other people do you think we're doing? I don't know. Maybe,
Well,
I don't know.
it was a while before I ran into someone else who is, I
Yeah.
mean, besides Mark Granger, who I made do it, that I just ran into. There was Randy Fugate, and I think his buddy was Travis. They actually became a Wilderness Systems dealer out of their garage in Northern Virginia. But I ran into Randy. This is the crazy thing. I was at the warm water discharge up on the Upper Potomac in winter, and I'm looking upstream and I see this kayak, and I see paddle blades not moving, but the kayak is moving, and I'm like, I don't understand. And I'm paddling up to him. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's another guy fishing out of a kayak I've never seen, and I just stopped fishing, and it was like half hour to like catch up with him because he's moving upstream, and I'm just like, I gotta meet a friend.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And they basically were selling Wilderness Systems mallards that they are rigging with Minn Kota trolling motors with foot control steering way before.
Wow.
And it's crazy because I was a no motor guy for a long time.
Yeah.
And I got Chad Hoover to blame for that, but
Yeah.
he was right. even with all the paddling is, that's what I pushed back. I'm like, no, I'm a ACA certified paddling instructor, and like I don't need motors, but like I'm so glad I got into them because they allow you to do a lot more.
Yeah.
The one thing that I worry though is that everyone does the motors and the pedal drive, and then they think, oh, I don't need the paddling skills, or they don't even know that they don't need it. Like you need a brace. You need to know how to do a sweep stroke. You get out there in snotty weather, and you got the paddle is what's going to save your ass.
And it's gotten me out of a lot of jams. Like I fished to Susquehanna, just like you, and it got me out of a lot of jams. The paddle did, because the current's constant, and if you don't know how to paddle, you're gonna get some tough.
I mean, I'll just say that I was in La Crosse, so I was at La Crosse, and not even La Crosse. I was on a little lake here in Missouri called Mazingo, and I have an Old Town. I have an Autopilot 136, and I mean, yeah, it's a big boat. But in La Crosse, my battery died, the first day, and then it actually died on me again the second day. But I got stuck in a shoot draw where it didn't really matter how much I was paddling. I could not make any forward movement at all. My battery died out, and that was really scary for me. But what I started to do is, because I always thought I don't need a paddle, so I kept on losing paddles off my kayak to strap, and I'd be halfway through the day and I'd be like, where'd my paddle go? So I started just breaking my paddle in half and just taking half with me. So I knew I'd probably lose that within 4 or 5 months, and then I had another half, and I would do it like that. But all that to say, I need to learn. Right? I've never felt falling out of a kayak. Praise. I hope I don't do this weekend by saying that. But I think that what you said about when you went up the river, mom's out there watching you. You know, you're flipping your kayak. You're doing these things that's really preparing you for later on. Like I don't know what I would do. Like I think that I'll just jump out of the kayak before it flips. But I need to really learn about the paddling thing because, dude, I've had to have a bass boat tow me out like 2 times. One that just was on a windy day, and I could not get this Old Town. I just couldn't do it with the paddle that I had. I needed to either have a longer paddle or just know how to paddle. And I think people take the motors for granted.
So
And there's
it's Trey. It's more than primary. It's more than backup propulsion, right? If you have a John boat and you get stopped by the conservation officer, he wants to see that you have that paddle because it's your backup. Yeah. If that's what you're treating paddling as, because you have a motorized or pedal drive kayak, you're missing out. And what it is if you're out there, and I'm going to give you a couple of different examples. If you're out there, and I'm going to talk about being out on Lake Erie with Chuck Earls as an example. We got out there and he swears, he's like, yeah, we'll have sustained at like 24 mile an hour. And I'm like, that's a no-go. Like for me on the Chesapeake, you know, once it's over 12 sustained, it's not worth it. It's not fun. He's like, well, you look at it and you tell me. And we get out there and I'm like, I get it. You have, you know, peak to trough. It started out at 5, it got up to like 7 foot from when you're all the way down to when you're all the way up 7 feet. Wow. And it was starting to break at the end of the day. And it was just like, hey, it's gotten progressively worse. We need to get out of there. Your paddle, and this is, you know, we were going with a motor and you have the waves that are like this, right? And you're coming down one and you're riding up the other. But if you're coming down one and the wave is starting to break from behind, it's going to try and turn you sideways. And if you don't have that paddle in your lap and deliver a really good sweep stroke where you get good torso rotation, you get a lot of the power from between your knee and your nipple, this core part of your body. Yeah. You get a lot of power from that. And to be able to turn it and keep your boat perpendicular to the wave. So like I'm going to do it top to bottom. The wave is breaking behind you and it tries to turn you this way. Mm-hmm. If you do a sweep stroke, it keeps you perpendicular, so it's not going to tumble you. Right. So it keeps you in the boat. It keeps you from being tumbled in that breaking wave. Right. The other part is if it does start to really push you sideways and you feel it crumbling, you can do what's called a brace. You can do a high brace like this, or you can do a low brace. I'm not really showing it well here, but basically you're going to take your paddle blade and you smack the water. And what it does is it pulls the boat underneath you. So these are paddling skills that go beyond you being efficient in propelling yourself forward. Yeah.
You said you smack the water with the paddle flat?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's called a brace. Just look up high brace or low brace in kayaking, whitewater kayaking. And it's not just for whitewater though. And I'm going to tell you, if you're on big water, if you're going out on, you know, even our inland lakes that, you know, when the wind gets up, you know, it's almost March and, you know, you have to have these skills to stay upright in it.
Now, one thing that I did a lot and I still do is I straddle my kayak with my legs out the sides when I'm fishing to just kind of give me stability and weight. Because here I like to fish windblown shorelines for wiper.
Sure.
Which for you would be like a striped bass or rockfish.
No, I know a wiper.
Okay, so I've been known to do that, and I would do that and put my bow into the waves and keep myself perpendicular to them, and that's kind of how I fished. And then if it started turning me, then I'd sweep it and get back, you know, to that position. But I never ever put myself parallel to those waves ever.
So I have a YouTube channel, and there's a whole playlist on kayak fishing skills, and one of those is the first video I ever did, which is a video version. I made a DVD. It's called River Kayak Fishing Skills DVD, and it's about they're paddling skills that go way beyond river fishing. I also did one at the Women's Fishing Federation. I did a seminar on big water, and I think we were on Lake Fork. But it's some of these navigation and paddling skills and safety related things that would be good for folks if they haven't.
So you
The other
get
thing
it.
I want to address, because
Where's that at?
both Trey and Marty mentioned not having flipped out of a kayak yet. You need to do that. Everyone needs to do that, because if you find yourself in a situation where the first time you are learning how to reboard is when it's gone really wrong for you in really rough conditions, it's important to have been there before, because then you're not going to panic. You're going to say, "Oh, this stinks. This stinks." But I know what to do. I've done this, and it's not easy, and it's not fun, and you worry about your gear, and you worry about being cold and hypothermic, but you've done it before. You know what it feels like to get back in your kayak. You know how to flip it back over. So say this is the right side up, and you go upside down like this. So like your seat is here. How do you get this back over? I mean, I've done videos on it. You put a strap on there, like a roof rack strap, and you flip it over. I did a really good one with Jameson Redding.
Yeah, I have one with a PVC deal in it where I can step on it and pull it back over.
Great. Everyone's got to do it, just so so you're not a statistic. So
right. Yeah, I have
mentioned the statistics of paddle sports related fatalities in certain states. Kayak anglers are taking over whitewater and other boating fatalities, and it's because so many people are getting into it without any education.
So Jeff, can you say, like, okay, say a guy goes out this weekend. Let's say he hasn't watched none of your videos. Maybe somebody that's watching this, they flip their kayak. What, without you telling us how to do like a practice maneuver, what is the best thing they can do in that moment? If there's no history, there's no education provided beforehand. They've never had the experience. They've never done it on purpose. They're out there. They flip it. What do they do?
Mechanically or psychologically?
Let's go both.
They're two different parts. Psychologically, you gotta just be in the water, get next to your boat, and just acknowledge, hey, this sucks, but I can do this. The whatever you got to do to not panic and waste energy, because your energy, your muscles, as you become hypothermic, are gonna become less impactful, like less effective. Like you're kicking, strength of your legs to propel yourself back up into it, it becomes less. If you waste that energy early on in just flailing, you're done, and that's how people die. And that's why I say that you started this with say no one's ever done this. Well, that is a problem, and that's why I advocate flip, learn how to reboard, because if you don't, you're gonna you will panic. But mechanically, I mean, I've done all the videos, but you got to get it right side up, and basically say, this is the right side up, and here's the bottom. And if you flip it this way, I'm trying to think if there's something I can do here. I'm using these cords. So here's the strap. It comes across here. You attach it here, and then you stand up here on your boat and fall back, and that strap flips it over. Okay.
So you literally
there's other ways to do it.
Kayak.
Huh? You can get up to your knees, and some kayaks are narrow enough because we we used to have more kayaks where this wasn't an issue, where you didn't have the super wide, super stable, false sense of security, think you're never going to flip it until you do. And then all that stability, all that width fights against you to get it back in any case. Really what it comes down to is if you're in the water next to it and you get it right side up, is that your head's going to be here. You're going to have to reach across and grab whatever strap or whatever you can get a hold of. Actually, the first thing is you have to make sure that there's nothing. Take all your rod holders, if you have little attachments on the track, take all that stuff off. Give yourself a nice flat, nothing's going to catch on it. No yak attack accessories along that rail, so that when you come here, there's nothing catching on your PFD to keep you from going topside. But basically, you reach across here and you grab a hold of this, which the boat's going to want to flip back over at that point. So you're going to be kicking back here as much as you can to just launch yourself up. And you're going to go end up on it sideways like this, where you're facing down. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. As soon as you get your hips over that rail, you're in. And then you just kind of flip over onto your butt and you'll be in a really weird position, but you're in the boat and the boat's upright. You'll figure out the rest from there.
Yeah.
But you gotta practice it.
Yeah. Now see, you can see this picture here. This is me on Milford Lake in Kansas in 45-mile-an-hour winds, catfishing in 3 to 4, maybe bigger, 5, sometimes 5, I don't know. But believe it or not, Christine Fisher is 30 yards away from me.
Yep.
In that deal, we were fishing for big catfish, blue catfish, but you can see how I straddled it. But that was not a smart thing to do. I'm in a cockpit kayak. As soon as it fills with water, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
And I did sink it at the shoreline when I was going in, but for the most part, I navigated pretty well. But there's a good
because you stayed parallel. I can see those the breaking waves, and you stayed parallel to it. Because if you weren't parallel to it, in that picture, you'd be taking on water right where your feet are.
Yeah.
If you were at a 30-degree angle, that's water flooding in there like crazy.
I kept it straight out. And what we did is I had a quick release anchor on mine. And so when we'd hook up, I pretty much had the net. You can see it in the back there. And Christine was ahead of me. She would hook into it and I would go up and I would net it. And then we'd go back to shore. Yep. We were only 40 yards offshore.
Okay.
But still, that was pretty dangerous. And should we have done it? I don't know. Maybe not. But but at that point, I had a lot of experience. But I have done where you say what I did is on a river. I would just like my little one. I've never flipped because of something that happened. What I have done though is kind of flipped it sideways to see how I'd roll out or whatever.
Right.
That otter one. But I also have this strap with, like I said, a little PVC that I can hook on, and I can step on it down in the water and push myself up if I have to.
So that ladder, that mechanical advantage is something that helps you get your hips over the rail easier than kicking. And it's a different if it's a kind of different mechanical way of doing it, but it definitely gets you in.
Well, the kicking is similar to if you fall through the ice. You want to kick your legs up behind you, right?
Yeah, close to the surface.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then just push yourself up onto the kayak.
Yep.
So I don't want to get too long. I think this is really important stuff, but like what I can't envision, Jeff, maybe you can help me here, is you're talking about this strap that goes on like a car. I'm figuring kind of like one of my straps that I get my kayak with that got the little thing where I tighten it. So like, okay, so I've now flipped my kayak. Where is this strap at? And doesn't it need to go all the way around the kayak? How does it just connect to one side? What is connecting that? And where do I keep that in order to even make it accessible?
So I'm getting ready to, a week from today, I'm flying to Boise to go pick up a Snake River Manufacturing trailer and then bring it back East Coast to drop it off somewhere. And then I come back here to Maryland, and I'm going to grab, I got a Pro Angler 14 that I just cleaned up yesterday. I had not used it since I was actually out at Door Shack last May, and got all the forward facing sonar and the 360 and just really well, rigged kayak with all the stuff on it. And
Mhm.
when it gets to be that big, and I actually took the strap because he asked, where do you put the strap? Well, it can't be in the front hatch where, like, in order to access it, you're opening it and all the water's flooding in. It needs to be accessible.
Mhm.
The strap, it is a Yak Attack strap, or like an NRS strap. It happens to be a Yak Attack one. They gave me a pile of them to give out to give to people to say, here, put this on your seat frame. So the
Mine's
back of the seat frame, it's just wrapped around and around and around and around.
Nice.
Mine
Okay.
is
So it's always where you can get at it if
Yeah.
it's upside down in the water.
yeah. See, I've got a Yak Gear pouch, has a zipper on it, and it's in there behind my seat.
Yep.
So now that it's behind the seat, though, where do I connect it to? That's what I'm wondering. Like, where does it connect to? Like, how do you connect?
The handle, the H rail on the Hobie. Usually there's something. You find something. If you really have to, you can push it through the scupper hole and run it out, and it comes out the other side, and you make a big loop. Whatever works.
So you strap it just like you're strapping your kayak. So what's what I'm saying? It's not like it's just like clipping onto something. You got to run it through the thing and tighten it down. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
You find something. So, but back to, sort of the historical progression. I started talking about how did I figure out kayak fishing, and how did I get to, just starting to do it with friends. And at some point early on, I figured, hey, I've had to learn a bunch of stuff. I've had to learn some paddling skills. I've had to learn some safety things. And I've also learned a lot about the logistics of river trips, float trips. And I was a member of the Potomac River Smallmouth Club, and I was the trip coordinator before I was president. And there's a lot to learn, especially with river fishing, about, like, if you don't know what you're doing, you'll do stupid things like leave the keys to the takeout vehicle in the put-in vehicle. I've been there, and I haven't done it, but I've been on that trip where I'm like, you dummy, are you kidding? We just camped on this island, and we're 6 miles into a 12-mile float over 2 days, and now we have to walk 6 miles because there are things that you got to teach, and I'm like, this is a thing. Like, I want to teach people this. How do I become a kayak fishing guide or instructor or whatever? And I went looking for insurance, and everyone laughed at me like, you're doing what? You're crazy. Get out. Like, we're not talking to you. But the American Canoe Association said, yeah, we'll get you insurance, but you have to see if you can get certification as one of our instructors. And I jumped in with a bunch of whitewater crazies and took a instructor certification class where I had rolled a few times in a whitewater class that I took, and I'd done the swiftwater rescue stuff, which is important. And I had paddling skills, but I wasn't out there to surf or do enders or barrel rolls and all the other crazy stuff. And I'm in this class with these people that's what the activity is. And not only that, I happened to enroll in Tom McEwen's class, who's this, you talk about legend. He's a legend in whitewater. And, I learned a lot, and I was for sure the oddball. Like, you're doing this because you want to teach people how to fish out of, okay, cool. Yeah. That's, and I got certification, and I did a year of teaching the classes for free. I did it through a message forum called riversmallies.com, which sprung out of bronzeback.com. And I said, hey, I'm going to be on the New River on this weekend. Anyone wants to come out on Saturday, I'll teach you the class. And then I do one on the James, or do one on the Shenandoah, or up on the Susquehanna, or anyone on the Potomac River Smallmouth Club that wanted my class. I did it to refine my curriculum, my syllabus. And then the next year, so that was 2001, 2002, I started actually doing classes and taking people out and teaching them paddling skills as part of hey, we're doing a float trip and we're going to kayak fish. It wasn't about, hey, let me put you on fish for the day. It's, I want to teach you the skill set so you're always going to be able to catch fish. And it was well beyond the paddling information. It was important fishing things integrated into the paddling information and the safety information, like forge assessment, stealth approaches. Biggest one, pattern development. How do you develop a pattern? How do you string together and replicate successful fishing? That's something that needs to be taught to a lot of people, because they just say, oh, I just caught them on spinnerbaits. Okay, cool. Did you catch them on current seams? Were you slow rolling them on the bottom, banging them near the tail end of the pool? Were you burning it on the surface? Were you banging into wood? What were you doing with the spinnerbait? What was the trailer? What was the, pattern development is basically making observations about two things: the location where the bite occurred, and then the presentation, like what you did, what the lure is, how fast it was moving, what the color, and color's way down on there, but like speed and location, location and presentation, those two things together. You make observations about those, and then you catch another fish and you make those observations again about location and presentation. And then you start looking for common denominators. Well, I may have switched to a crankbait, but I've caught the last three on current seams, whether it was a spinnerbait or crankbait. I actually switched to a buzzbait, and it's the same thing. It's all on current seams. Okay, well, was it always burning super fast, or it's not quite warm enough? So maybe, I don't know, you refine your speed, you refine the location, the presentation, and you replicate that. That was an important thing to teach so many different people. Mm-hmm. Whether you're just getting them to, dead stick a 3-inch Senko to catch anything, or whether you were getting them to really drag a jig in the right spot to get something big. So I did that for, I don't know, I think it was 9 years that I did my classes. And at the end of it, I changed, I was just doing that on the weekends. Like April through October, I'd do the classes. And then the winter fishing was my time. And at the end of that, I changed jobs in a way that I couldn't count on meeting somebody at said launch at a certain time, because the morning cook would always call off and I'd have to run in and triage cook for 135 residents being 2 hours late. Yeah. So I couldn't do it anymore. I took on a facility that was tough, and that was the end of my teaching in person. But I was I still want to teach this stuff.
Yeah.
So I started teaching the video camera, and that was the river. The river kayak fishing skills DVD was the first one, and then I did 3 more specific to river smallmouth patterns, and that's around the time that I was doing a lot with Chad in producing video for the early kayak bass fishing YouTube channel, and for Wilderness Systems, and I did some other ones for Do It Molds and some other companies that exchanging product for I'll make you videos.
Yeah, that's the same where I'm at in the stage of my kayak fishing, is that I created that Substack platform so that people could go there to get information, because you can't guide everybody. And the other thing is, you guide somebody and they want more information and we can't meet up, so they could just go there and they can go into that and see that. One thing I noticed though about you though, and Jeff, and this comes from a long history of knowing who you were and speaking with you and so forth, is that I consider you a cerebral angler. Would you agree?
I think about fishing a lot. Is that?
Well, I mean, you have a process or a process that you use to catch those fish, where a lot of people just throw it out there. Oh, that looks good over there. you are taking an analytical approach to it.
Okay, let's look at the early evidence of that sort of. I
Sure.
need to understand it. Let's take
Yeah.
a record, and I've been posting some of these older
No,
pictures.
I've got
This
some.
is a you have some, but I'm going to pick out one in particular. This
Okay.
is from
Oh, let me get
2002.
back. Okay.
You go ahead and pull yours up, and I'm going to find a good one
Okay.
that feeds into your
Okay. Cool.
what you were saying.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you on that. I just wanted to let you know that I did have some of those, and we've got a really old one here.
Yeah. Yep. That striper was near the chain bridge in DC.
Wow.
Actually, this one's kind of cool because this is my
We got comments here too. I got to get those up.
during the white. I talked about all the whitewater crazies in there. That was me in that ACA class. The first time I certified as an instructor. So, so this is like a just a photo album where I recorded things like river level, the patterns, what the temperature was, what if it was pre or post spawn. I'll try to find one where I actually put.
I saw some of those where you put the information right on the photo, kind of. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so you kept some records of what you did.
Yeah, I just took pictures, but when I put them into the album, I put details like what I caught it on and what happened during that trip. All right, here's one. So this one has. Let me see at the top. It says Rappahannock River drought. The Remington gauge was 2.48. The Culpeper gauge on the Hazel was 0.20. So it's a historic record of how much drought there was. And I did a lot of the recording of of the gauge, the understanding gauges and understanding what 4.5 feet at the Remington gauge on the Rappahannock means before I drive the 2 hours to get there was important. But I would learn, like when I went down to the New River, they would hydro electric, generation all week long because they needed electricity Monday through Friday, and the fishing would be good. And then I'd go down on Saturday and Sunday. They wouldn't need as much electricity, and they wouldn't pump water out of Clater, and the fishing would suck on the weekends. I'd go down and be like, what? Yeah. So I learned through that. You say being cerebral, like, hey, when they're pushing water out, that's when you want to be there. So I would take days off during the week to go down to the New.
I see. But now, you've emphasized safety quite a bit. So what we were wondering is this the result of a prior scenario where there was a time when you had an extreme amount of danger, or was it from that time you almost got hypothermia when you were camping?
Yeah, the hypothermia incident was one. I mean, there was I mentioned the Old Town Loon 138, and there was a moment where I flipped it and popped up and said, I need an education. Like I wore glasses back then before I got the laser thing done, and lost my glasses and was wearing, cotton and blue jeans and lost a bunch of body temperature. And I mean, that was the moment that I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Clearly, because I've messed up. And I'm by myself partially under a log. The kayak is submerged. I've lost gear. I don't know how to get back in it. There's a lot of current on me, and I'm sort of stuck. I'm going to crawl back up on this log or find a way to get on the downstream side because I'm being pushed on it and it hurts.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one, but there was a series of them. I mean, it's when you're in your, you know, in your early 20s, you're pretty resilient as a human being. And hypothermia, if I was in that situation at 49 years old, as I was when I was 22 or whatever, I don't live through that at 49. At 23, I did. 22, 23. Um, I've been tethered to the bottom of the Potomac River by an anchor. Bad. Like, I'm pretty sure that Kurt Smith saved my life one day when I was tethered and just whipping back and forth. And I couldn't. And I was in a skirted boat. I was in that perception access, and it was so much current that if I did flip upside down, I don't know that I'm wet exiting with my long legs in there. I don't know that I'm getting out of there cleanly.
Wow.
So, I mean, these things happen, and you're in situations, and I started taking a lot of people out, and they would have their situations like that. But it was good that I had, been through some of that, and I could be the person to help somebody out. I could be the person, and it was actually one in this book that was a dehydration story. It was, me and Pete. Pete and I were on the Rappahannock, and we did a very long float trip. And he put all of his eggs in one basket. He put one, he had one big thermos full of water, and like early on, he didn't let on, but like the lid wasn't on, and it tilted over, and he like lost most of his water. And it was on this like triple digit heat day, and the river was low, and we had to drag a lot. And he's like, "Hey, can I get one of your waters?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I throw it to him, and I'm like, "It's 9:30. I saw the thermos. Why is he asking?" And like, he starts panic drinking, and he's like, "Can I get another one of your waters?" And I'm thinking, I brought like 6. Like, "Sure, Pete, have another water." I'm down to 4, but I've drank half of one. And here's Trey's like, "I'm gonna drink some water."
No, Jeff, I just had dude. It's been killing me. Like, I've been listening to what you've been saying, but I'm just like, dude, I have met this guy before. Like, I'm not just Facebook, and it's killing me. And then I look at my shirt, and I'm like, I got a kayak angler. I got the KAS event from Wapapello, and I'm like, so I just texted my buddy. I'm like, man, was that Jeff Little that did that show on that hammock thing and talked about saving money when you go out on trips? That was you, bro.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that was him. So it's like it all came back to me. I'm like, man, I know him. Like, this just, it looks too familiar. Yeah. So I have
the hypothermia story ended with Pete breaking his paddle. We're out of water, and we have like way too big of a float trip. Like, we had, I think, 13 and a half miles and no water to do it. No water in the river, and like, we were out of water to drink.
Jeez.
And we survived it, and we got to the end, and both of us were like dehydrated, bad headache, your whole body aches, almost flu-like. And like, we both once we got to Mott's Run on the Rappahannock, walked up to his truck, and we go towards to see, what do you, all right, Pete, here it is, what water do you have in your truck? And he had one like unopened, totally like road dust, and just like no label, had been in the bed of his truck for like months. And like, he races for it and grabs it, and then looks at it, and almost like knowing like, yeah, I drank most of his water, and he just like hands it to me, and I'm like, yep, I'm taking that. And I drank half of it. I'm like, here, chug it. He's like, no problem. And like, we were miserable with dehydration that day, and like, we loaded up after drinking that one bottle of water. But like, we both went from there to out on Route 3. There was a Walmart, and we walked in like sweaty and dirty, just covered in mud, in there, and went to the gallon jugs of water, and like stood there in the aisle, both opened it, and just
Wow.
And like, people like walking past us like, what's wrong with these guys? Like, you should probably go buy that or check out. And like, no, we're right here, we're drinking it. So when you kayak fish, you have these adventures and these dumb things that happen, and you flip, and you you get, step on rusty nails and need, I don't know, all these crazy things that happen. When you can educate somebody, when you can teach the next person, here's what I've learned, then maybe they don't have that, and they enjoy the sport a little bit more.
So what do you recommend, Jeff, for the people that are listening to this and will listen? You've told about, the safety part and your stories, of course, that, man, they're hair raising. And what do you recommend that the people today do? Because there's really no we have lots of kayak clubs, kayak fishing clubs, but we don't have any safety demonstrations anywhere. Where do we send people to get educated?
So recently, and I did my ACA classes for 9 years or whatever, and then stopped. And you actually had a picture of Juan Verut on the cover, and on the right side, he was an ACA instructor, and he kind of took things to the next level. So he and I were the only ones that did that for a long time, and he stopped doing it. And yeah, bottom right with the boonie hat and in that whitewater, that's Juan Verut. Bunch of people took his class. Bunch of people took mine, and he took over doing that when I stopped doing them in person. But recently, Andrea White is someone who she's a ACA instructor herself. Does a lot of she actually works for a nonprofit called Georgia Rivers. They protect. They basically the organization set up. I actually did a bunch of videography for them over the winter, but their mission statement is to connect people with and to protect Georgia Rivers. But they do a lot of education, so you can sign up for classes through Georgia Rivers, and they actually have a kayak fishing guy who's going to be doing classes there too. But Andrea kind of wrote me back in to becoming an instructor again and teaching classes. And I actually did one with Russ and Dustin Hoy.
Yeah,
Russ Snyder's and I did one right after the first kayak adventure series. But there's a bunch of us that have certified as under the kayak fishing curriculum under ACA here recently. So I've recertified. I know that Russ Snyder's is an instructor. Drew Gregory is an instructor. Wade Clements with Yak Attack. Kevin with Kaku Kayaks is an instructor. And then Dustin with Raccoon Creek Outfitters, Dustin Hoy. And then also Jameson Redding. I think even before us, he got certified as an ACA instructor. And Fletch Griffin. Jeff Luckett has been probably in more recent years. Jeff Luckett is someone who's done more for the kayak fishing curriculum than anybody, and he's I want to say he got his instructor's his IT certification. So he's someone who can train people to be instructors. So he's an instructor trainer, and he's in Tennessee.
Can we get these eventually, like regionally throughout? Because like there was one I wanted to go to, but I was in Florida, and I said I'm not going to fly to Florida for a class and then come back. You know what I mean?
You should also look up. So I mean, ACA is, and really Andrea is the one who's kind of like pushing for this because she saw the statistics on the majority of these paddle sports related deaths now are kayak anglers. Latrell Gaither is another, and Eric Goodson, and I think they're both in Georgia.
Yeah.
So I mean, people are getting the certification and starting to do their classes, their ACA classes, but it's a paddling class. It's not, if you set it up the way that I did, you can incorporate it as a guided fishing trip with this paddling instruction. But if you just are there for me to put you on fish on the Susquehanna River, don't sign up because it's a class. Yeah. You're going to work. You're going to flip kayaks. You're going to learn how to do peel outs and eddy turns and ferries, and you're going to, you're going to learn. You're going to work hard, and you're going to learn a lot. So I'm hoping to do some on the Susquehanna this summer. but it's tough to commit to it because I'm again into new employment with Snake River Manufacturing, selling trailers and other transport related accessories. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Do you think eventually that we'll have these classes by state, regionally, or will they be required, things like that?
so I think if you go to the ACA website and try to, I think there's somewhere where you can search for an instructor. I don't know if you can drill down at that level of hey, I want someone with a kayak fishing endorsement is really
Yeah,
what they've developed here in the last few years.
yeah.
So
Okay.
I
Now,
increased my level of certification from we did so a bunch of us did it December year before last down in Georgia, and it wasn't a whitewater certification, but I got my back in. Wade Clements actually did it with me down in Western North Carolina, and I had to roll for that one, which is pointless in kayak fishing, but it was a box that had to be checked, and I did a successful combat roll in whitewater amongst a bunch of other things. But I got my L3 instructor certification back in August, so I can teach in class 2 whitewater. But honestly, for kayak fishing, like learning in some class 1 is good.
mhm,
So
mhm. I see. Okay, I want to switch gears just a little bit and go over the the publication part of this, the photography and how that evolved real quick.
sure,
How how the social media had an effect on what you did, because that's these covers that I have here coming up. A lot of that happened because of that. So if you want to go into that a little bit, about uh, vintage kayak fishing in the publications era,
sure.
go ahead.
You got any pictures
Oh
to
yeah,
pull up or
yeah, oh yeah. Let me see just a second here. I'll bring one here. Now we got a lot of people still going here. So here's a couple. You're on the cover of these magazines, and you're on the cover of all kinds of magazines, man.
so I think the first real big one was Bassmaster in
Wow.
2002, and it wasn't a cover, but it was a story going solo for smallmouth. I think it was 2003, September, October 2002 or 2003, and
Yeah, it's a big
No,
story.
not yet. We're gonna do that later.
so and I ended up writing for Woods and Waters. I actually wrote a book on kayak fishing for smallmouth, and the editor of Woods and Waters here, CC McCotter,
Uh-huh.
he's the one that ended up publishing the book. Um,
Oh, wow.
we did that in 2007, and I wrote and took pictures for Pennsylvania Angler and Boater, so it's their conservation, their state agency. But basically, this was in the same time period as message forums, but no
Right,
Facebook, Instagram,
right.
YouTube wasn't really around then, and this was just a good way to get to promote the sport and teach people about it and write articles and
Yeah.
you know
The same thing happened here. I got one right here where I was on the cover of this magazine. People just wanted pictures of guys catching a fish by a kayak. That's a
Yep,
perception there. That's a
nice.
or caster.
Yep,
And they just said, "Hey, we want to do a little photo shoot because we need a cover shot of a guy by a kayak." I was the only guy in the brat. This is 2008, so about
yep,
the same time you're doing that stuff.
yeah.
You know? Amazing.
So David Hart wrote for Bassmaster, and he did. I'm gonna pull this one out.
Uh-huh.
Going solo for river smallmouth, right? And he followed me. That whitewater scene that's below is on the Rappahannock, and I hear I'm netting a fish that's about a 19-inch smallmouth on the New River. So
Wow.
he followed me on a couple different trips to get the right shots. And this was, he's still writing. He's still not digital photography, but this was, and he actually covered. I actually told him you need to cover the guys using the catarafts, the little one-man catarafts. So that's my buddy Greg Phipps. That's on the Aggleston to Pembroke float on the New River in Virginia.
Hmm.
And because that was a big part of the whole riversmallies.com, that message forum, that
Yeah.
crowd
Yeah.
was the catarafts. But,
Yeah.
he definitely covered, hey, he started this class where he's teaching people these skills. And I think that was, that's one I'm really proud of, because it was a national publication that really got the concept out to a whole lot of people, exposed them to the idea of kayak fishing in a river for smallmouth, or just kayak fishing in general.
Yeah.
In 2002 wasn't a widely heard of thing. And then some of these covers, that one looks like it's February or to 2013. I did a lot in that 2006 to
Mm-hmm.
2014, and by 2014 I was kind of switching over more to doing the video and less of the
Yeah.
of the print media. But I will tell you, my favorite publication that I wrote for was called Kayak Fish, and Paul Leibowitz
Leibowitz. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
was the best editor ever. You got to get Paul Leibowitz on.
I got his name. I already have his name, I think, on the list. So.
He would take my writing and he'd rework it and kick it back and say, all right, I changed a couple things. I thought that this would float. I mean, he would just say, and I'd get it back. I'd look at it and be like, I don't, I wouldn't say it to him. I'm like, I don't see where you changed anything. What he did is to make it flow better. He didn't change my story or my voice. And I'd look at the original. I'm like, he changed a lot.
Huh.
And he made it better.
Yeah.
He was just an amazing editor. And he appreciated, I guess, a lot of the education and the teaching and just the fact that, hey, we're doing this in rivers, which I think he thought was cool. But Kayak Fish was a very fun publication. And Kayak Angler, I've done a lot for, a lot of stories working with Rick Burnley over the years and getting him pictures. And I think I got cover on that. I took the photo once where I was looking over. You can kind of see Hans Knut's shoulder. Mm-hmm. And his shoulder is here, and he's filming with my video camera. And then it's
I got that one somewhere. Yeah,
it's really Jed Plunkett with like this river smallmouth jumping, and he's making this like really crazy, like just hamming it up, like like
I saw that.
And then I think in 2017 I finally got on the cover myself. But that was like a fun thing to do when we were in this.
It was a transition.
It was.
But still, what people don't realize, though, is that the forums are still alive and well, but I don't think people realize it, that there's a lot of juice there.
Yeah.
And even in Nebraska, we have one here that we've had for, decades, really.
Right.
But you have, they're all over the place if people go to them, You can get a little bit off the social media, but all that is like people taking video and pictures. But YouTube is a great educational resource, though, as well.
Yeah.
So, but that was I've got it all in writing here of that trail you took there, and so forth. But and then so from what do you see as the biggest change in kayak fishing from when you started to now? What would be the biggest change?
Just the scope. It's I know that sounds like a general, but like numbers.
Yeah.
So many people got into it. That's the biggest change. How many people are doing it?
Yeah.
It delivered as promised.
Yeah.
Everyone said, in 2000 whatever, oh, it's going to be huge.
Yeah.
And then we got to 2014 and everyone's like, it's huge.
Yeah.
Oh, 2014 to now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Way bigger.
Yeah.
It delivered.
Yeah.
It delivered, and it continues to. And I think I've actually seen some of the clickbaity sort of, and I indulged in it a little bit. Is kayak fishing dead? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was like, no, I don't mean live scope, Chad. Although I did use it to catch my biggest smallmouth out on Door Shack, forward facing sonar on a kayak. Anyways, I don't know. It delivered. It got big, and it continues to get big. And I think we had this huge explosion of it getting even bigger and permeating, people that would have thought of it. I think COVID grew it even more because people had free time and free money, and they're like, what am I going to do? And I knew from talking to paddle sports, retailers at the time, and people that had, you know, fishing retailers and hunting, and there were all these people flooding to do things in the outdoors because you couldn't go to any of the things where people bunch up together. They spread out. That grew it even more. And then we had an evening out in, you know, and people say, "Oh, it's dying." No, it's not.
No.
It's getting, the retail end of things took a hit though the last 2 years. I've seen a lot of kayak shops go under or pass the torch. I actually saw a post today that somebody bought, or is John Ward is no longer, he's handing over the reins to someone of Paddler's Cove up in northern New Jersey, and I'm like, good, because a lot of them, the paddle shop owners are aging out,
Yeah.
or they want to hand it off to their kids, or I know like Pack and Paddle down in Louisiana, there were some of the employees bought it. So John and his wife sold it to them. But there has been a thinning of the herd. Last year, as a sales manager for Boondocks, I visited 144 different retail locations, paddle shops nationwide, and I know there was, I think by the end of the year, it was closer to 20 that I knew went out of business.
Wow.
So it's a thinning of the herd for sure.
Yeah.
And there's a discussion there to be had on why.
Right. And there's a thinning in the competitive world as well, but then new guys come in. But overall, it's not dead. There's more and more people all the time getting into it, because I'm seeing more and more people, even where I travel the country too, and I'm seeing more and more out there all the time.
Yeah.
That are kayak fishing, and they want to know more, but don't know where to go sometimes. So that's why we're doing this history as well, to let people know where it came from and where it's going, So
for sure.
And then, by the way, did want to say that I didn't see my first kayak of another person for 6 years.
Yeah.
And you know what it was?
What?
A Hobie.
Yeah.
And he was in the middle of the lake. I saw this blue, and I go, "That's a kayak." And I went over to him just like you, and chased him down, and he was trolling for a wiper in his Hobie with his pedals,
Yeah.
And I thought, nah, I don't want one of them things, man. I just want to paddle.
Yeah.
And did that, and I stayed with it for that long. So then here's Steven Surgeon. Steven Surgeon says growth happens in stages. Sometimes there's explosive growth and the growth slows, but the roots develop for another growth. But I'd say that's pretty true. That's, and there's a resurgence. There's also a resurgence, like when we went to pedals, when we went to motors, and who knows what's next, hybrids of some sort, who knows? I don't know where it's going to take us, but.
Well, and I want to say there's always two camps of thought, but a lot of times it's more. But I'm going to use paddlers and then pedal drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And each has its place, right?
Yeah.
And then the motors came in, but it's the same thing with like what I'm doing now. There are, selling the trailers for Snake River. There are trailer people, and then there are truck bed people, and there's rooftop tent or rooftop.
I'm a rooftop.
Okay, it's fine. and then there are people that go all in with the electronics and like have the super
Yeah.
the pro angler I talked about, and then there are people like, nah man, give me a shoalie and a paddle and like a little pack of baits and a rod, and that's it, and I'm
Yeah.
dragging through the woods, and I'm still playing that game of doing both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it depends on the, and then there's this other, weird thing I'm doing with inflatables, but that's different.
That's pretty cool too. Now, like for instance, I'm in that Yaka forward thing. I treat mine as a Swiss Army knife. I can take off or put on whatever I want. Some kayaks, like Trey, your kayak, you pretty much got to use that motor.
Yeah. There's no, yeah. In
Yeah,
Old Towns, we got some
yeah,
other great stuff,
yeah.
at
And
Old
that's
Town.
not saying it's a bad one. It's just saying
Right.
that's what he's
And
The
that's
way
what I
it
really
is.
got for is that stability. For me, it was just that comfort stability.
Yeah. So like the kayak I have, which is a Hobie Outback, I can pedal it, I can paddle it, I can put a sail on it, and I can put a motor on it. So I've got versatility there.
I've actually whitewater paddled the Outback.
Yeah,
I had
I
a
believe it.
20,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's a legitimate.
yeah.
Like you can paddle that.
I was on level twos up there in Susquehanna on some of that in my Outback going down that. It was fun. It was a blast doing it, and it's been fairly stable for me. But there are other kayaks that are not versatile, where you are all in on one certain like the what is it, the new Bonafide is it XRT or
XTR.
Yep,
XTR? They say you can paddle it, but you're not going to pedal it, and it's big. It's big, but it's a good platform to stand on if you're going to stand up and fish.
for sure.
Anyway, we're getting off a little bit here. I hope we've covered a lot of your history. And Jeff, I at some point I am going to try to pick your brain some more on some things, and I'll probably research some more because I want to record this stuff. And your story is intriguing of how you started, and it sounds to me like you love kayak fishing, right?
I do. I was blessed to find employment in it with Torqueedo, and I would say before that, sort of employment when I was the pro staff director for Wilderness Systems, which was
Yeah.
a paying gig that was a part-time deal. But I worked almost 7 years with Torqueedo and made that transition that few people do. They found full-time employment in it. Some people try to do it with the tournaments. It's tough.
Yeah, it's
It's
tough.
tough. You
Yeah,
have to be an efficient human being.
yeah.
Jeff, I actually won a Torqueedo at the 250, the new
Nice.
Torqueedo, the nice one, and I was
Yeah.
going to actually put it on my Old Town as two motors. I haven't got around to it yet; it's still in the box. But maybe we're there, maybe we're not. But I wanted just to kind of machine gun question you about just a couple things that I find really interesting. The first one is Quest for 23, and I know that you're a big fan. I mean, I see that you're with. I can't say the name right. I want to say it's Ashigan. How do I say it?
Chegan.
Achigan.
Achigan.
Achigan. So yeah, I want to hear. I want to hear what your biggest smallie is. I also want you to talk about. So my buddy does a lot of wade fishing for smallmouth. He's an old dude, and he says, and I'm kind of I can see where he's going with this. There's a huge difference between an 18-inch smallmouth and a 19-inch smallmouth. Like you can catch 18-inch smallmouth is pretty regularly down the Huzzah. I mean, he can, but there's something really magical that happens between that 18 and 19-inch mark. Why is that so significant? And there's one more question. You can remember these is if you can only pick one bait, one color to go wade and just kind of, or even in your kayak to go catch smallmouth, what bait and what color are you picking? So let's talk about the Quest for 23, biggest smallmouth first.
So the picture there is is my biggest river smallmouth, and I caught that during a river bassin tournament in which Jed Plunkett and we won it as the team deal, but we also set the team series record. So it was 3 of my fish and 3 of his fish, and We had 123.75 inches on 6 fish. It was, I think it was my best day of river smallmouth fishing ever.
Wow.
Wow.
That was a 610. I got 2 others that were over 5. And I'm going to tell you, I'll fish the Susquehanna for 2 years in a row and sometimes not catch one over 5. But that day I had 3 of them over 5, legitimately, that I weighed on the boga and know. And I weigh fish. I don't hold up a 20 inch. Oh, I got a 5 pounder. I hate that. Oh, I hate that. Like, your 20 incher is probably really, like, give it its respect. It's a really beautiful 3 pound, 14 ounce fish. Give it its respect. Maybe it's into the mid 4s.
Okay.
If it's 20, you're probably not much more than 4.5. Really, to get to a legitimate 5, in most cases, you're 21 and something to 22. Yeah, you're in that range. That fish was not over 22. That thing was grotesquely fat. And when I reached in its mouth to lip it, I actually got pinched by a crayfish that was loose in there with a bunch of other like minnows. Like it had its mouth full and was trying to cram in a spinner bait that had it was a 3/4 ounce spinner bait. It was a pro assassinator clacker spinner bait with a double skirt and then like a 5.5 inch swim bait on top of it. And it was eating that as well. And that fish probably wasn't that weight 2 days prior. It had been the first rise in all, I think it was early October, and it had been like really low and clear for a long time. And a tropical storm came in on the weekend of this tournament and Jed and I knew where to go when it rises like that. And he went to one spot, I went to another, and we just cracked him all day long. And I don't know how many over 20 I got that day, but it was I didn't get anything over 22, but I mean it was a lot of 20+ inch fish.
So you're on a quest to get a 23-inch smallie, right?
Well, that's the Achigan, that's what Josh Shrenko with Achigan, who's the official brand of smallmouth bass, like that was his one of his early sort of branding things, and that is sort of, to catch a 23-inch smallmouth is exceedingly rare. I got really close.
Well, ironically, that's what my quest is in Nebraska, to catch a 23 here. I've got a 22.5.
Yeah.
And we actually have with Hoodoo. Hoodoo is helping sponsor some of our events this year. And with Hoodoo, if anybody catches a 23-inch bass on our events here in Nebraska live, they can pick any kayak they want off his site.
Nice.
It just hasn't been done in a live event. People have said, "Oh, I've caught a 24," but no one's actually had one on a board with a picture. You know what I mean?
Right.
So anyway, that's why I wanted to see if you were trying to get a 23 there too. And so
Jeff, what's the difference between a 23-inch smallmouth and a 23-inch largemouth? What's the significance between the two?
I mean, largemouth just get bigger, especially in other parts of certain parts of the country, and
yeah,
a 23-inch largemouth is totally impressive. A 23-inch smallmouth is like really good, legitimate videography of Bigfoot or something. I don't know, like they're out there. They are out there.
Does Doorshack have them? Because I'm taking a trip up there in Fort Peck and Doorshack here in the next 2 years.
Yeah, and I was there in May, and I got a 22 3/8 inch long. It was 7.1.
Wow!
And it was the most pristine.
Yeah.
Like, all right, you're looking at this fish here, this Susquehanna River fish.
Yeah.
Like where my hand is supporting it, it had been like gnawed on by some other animal that it's missing part of its belly there. Yeah. Like it's got like fin rot and like is beat up and scarred, and like the swirl pattern on the bars aren't all uniform the way they should. That Doorshack fish was pristine.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything out of alignment. Those fish are not having any hardship at all. Nothing. You catch a smallmouth on the Susquehanna. I had it happen back in November, or end of October. I'm reeling in a 16-inch smallmouth, and the muskie comes and T-bones it. Nothing is stressing these Dworshak fish, and they got these kokanee, and they're these like salmonid little, easy munching snacks that are everywhere. So that's what's going on there.
That's awesome, man.
Watch my video on that, and that'll help you learn a little bit about what's going on up there. But and I didn't figure it out until the last day. Yeah. Like I was there 3 days with Brandon Waugh, and Brandon cracked him at the end of day 2.
Okay,
and I filmed it, but I didn't participate, and he was getting them on the on the mag drafts, and like I got there at the end of this blitz.
Yeah. And, so were you in a kayak?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
in the. Some guys have told me I'm crazy for doing it in the kayak, and I'm like, no, you can do the kayak.
Yeah, I mean, I've been 7 miles out in Erie in a kayak, so
yeah. So Trey, did he answer all your questions yet?
Kind of. There's the one, but like you fished all over, Jeff. So for me to ask you what your bucket list smallmouth trip was, like where do you, like, not giving us a location, but what river? What do you feel like you could really go out and catch a once in a lifetime smallmouth? Like where do you? Because in your mind, there's one river that you feel like you can go to that just holds, like you said, the Bigfoot. Where is that? Like, what river would that be? Is that the river we don't talk about, or is that a river that you could tell us?
One that I'd really like to fish that I've not, and I've been over a bunch of times, actually on the way up to this shop in Canada, Frontenac Outfitters, is the St. Lawrence. Like, I want to go learn some of the St. Lawrence. And I know that is a treacherous, deadly river.
Yeah.
And I just, it's fascinating looking water to me. And I know it cranks out some giants.
Wow.
Yeah.
One bait. You got to pick one bait. You're going to take one bait, one rod with you. What do you? And you're going to catch a smallie in the river. What are you taking?
It's a little black finesse jig that I make that I put. They discontinued the Z-Man bat wings. I'm mad. I've been switching over to the baby goat as the trailer, but no, it's a finesse jig that I tie with. I actually did a live on my Instagram account. I did a live of me tying a couple of them in green, but black. It would be black. Mm-hmm. But I tie with the bucktail, some round rubber, and the silicone. I do all 3 of those because there's this diversity of motion in both round rubber, well, all 3: round rubber, silicone, and then hair. And it's bucktail that I had during the rut here in Maryland. I don't hunt, but I'll drive around and get the roadkill and just chop those tails and go boil them with a rit dye and make my own stuff. Yes, bring back the bat wings for sure.
Yeah, I see. And I use that micro goat with smallies.
Yeah,
and I got 3rd in 2 tournaments with it last year.
Yeah,
using that one just by itself.
It's a good bait.
Yeah.
What I've been doing is taking the baby goat, and I'm cutting maybe 1/3 of the body off, and it makes it squat enough. And then you have the 2 little, it's like the claw. It's just, they're moving. There's current. They're doing it. And then when you swim it, it does.
Yeah, it does those little flutters. Yeah.
Which is what the claws do. When they scoot backwards, they kind of tuck underneath them like this. Mm-hmm. So you can do that with crankbait too. You tie the silicone material to the belly hook you put a skirt on the belly hook of a craw crankbait, and it gives it that little extra motion of the claws tucked up underneath it.
That's some juice. That's some juice. That's some Jeff Little juice right there, boy.
Yeah. Well, if that baby goat and that micro goat are perfect for that little flutter.
The bat wings have been real good to me though, and
Well, they don't have any, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But so okay, well, let's wind her down, guys. Any shout outs? Anybody, Jeff? That
my new employer.
Okay, who's that?
Steve Carroll.
Steve Carroll. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for hiring me, Steve.
And that's with the trailers, right?
Yeah, he's crazy smart as an engineer, as someone that can take a concept of how to make, and we're lucky that he's doing the trailer thing, but it's going to grow to to other solutions. But he's one of us. He's a kayak angler who this is his passion project, is making the best trailers that will not leave you stranded. He's doing really smart things like, hey, let's do a spare tire mount that has the whole hub assembly part of it, and that's what it mounts to. And then let's give it a molly panel on the back and make a little tabletop thing. Because like when you're screwing around with all your stuff in your gearbox and you want to, you need a place to set things down. Like he thinks like a kayak angler, but his proficiency is in design is, you're going to see a lot of it. He's making stuff that's not going to leave you stranded on the side of the road. That's really what it amounts to.
What's the brand name of that trailer?
So it has been Snake River Lockers, but we're changing it to Snake River Manufacturing.
Okay.
And if you go to the website now,
I've been there.
It isn't right yet, and we're working on it. But I'm the new sales and marketing director, and we're expanding.
It has
and these are kayak trailers.
What's that?
These are kayak trailers.
Kayak trailers that there's be a single and a double, and one that, we'll have the rooftop tent, and then if you want to put the rod lockers on there. And I don't want to get too much into it because we're still at the the early stages of it, but we're going to take a lot of those concepts and adapt them to the truck bed for people who are not kayak people. I'm going to leave it at that. There's some cool ideas that we're collaborating on that are going to, it's going to rethink some, it's going to be interesting solutions to problems that people that I've done this market research mostly through Facebook, where I ask people their opinions and do polls and things like that. But it's drilling down to, all right, what are the problems we as kayak anglers experience, right? I quantified that. I got a bunch of different responses in this. If you look back on my Instagram and this group on Facebook called Kayak Fishing Surveys, which is an open source. Anyone in kayak fishing that wants to put a poll up there, do it, because people love answering those things. But I've done market research there and really quantified what are the problems that kayak anglers want solved. And we're going to solve some problems for people. And for sure, the transport and gear storage is a big part of that. So
that's one there. There's one there for you.
Yep.
Yeah. There's big lockers on it, and you can open the two doors, but I think you can still put your rods all the way across it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So pretty cool. Yeah. All right. Anyway, so that's a good shout out there. And then so anyway, Jeff, we had a lot of people on and off here today. We still have a lot of people on, but we really appreciate the information. We could probably talk for hours, couldn't we, Trey, on this stuff?
Yeah.
But the main thing I think the best thing that we got out of this though is the safety portion though, and in your adventures when you were younger. But the safety thing, it kind of made me think, a little bit too, because I feel like I'm fortunate that I haven't had it happen. But at the same time, what do we do when we capsize? And do we have the right clothing on? And
I will tell you that this time of year I'm in a dry suit, and there are people that'll be like, it costs too much.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're not going to do that, and I've lost a friend to the Susquehanna River in 2000, hypothermic drowning death. If you're not going to do the dry suit thing, at least have a dry bag
Mhm.
with a way to easily, quickly start a fire and dry clothing.
Mhm.
That'll get you most of the way to not dying from hypothermia,
Mhm.
provided you can get to shore.
Yeah.
That's it.
Jeff, can you tell us again where we can find them YouTube videos of you doing some safety stuff?
Sure. It's just the channel's called The Little Stuff. So I'm Jeff Little. It is the little stuff that makes the difference between fishing and catching.
I love
Right.
it.
It's also the little stuff of knowing, what you don't know about safety and hypothermia in all of these
Yeah.
mishaps that I've had and other people have had, that I want other people to speed up the learning curve and not experience the same level of pain that I've had in learning what I know now.
Yeah. Same here. Amen.
So there's in that the little stuff YouTube channel, dig into the playlist, because there's kayak fishing skills is a good playlist with a lot of that safety related stuff, but also it's the end of February and I've organized my on the water adventures into playlists that are month by month. So if you've never dug into much on my YouTube channel, just find the March playlist and watch some stuff, because it'll tell you here are some patterns that are about to start popping.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Whether you're fishing, and there's a whole lot of different species on there. The main one is river smallmouth, but there's
Yeah.
tidal largemouth and there's redfish and
Yeah.
good bit on striped bass and catfish and walleye and a lot of stuff.
Nice.
But dig into the playlist, and in particular the month by month playlist.
But and really, and I wanted to mention this too. That isn't it ironic? Like when we had Chad on, we had Dennis Spike on, Jim Salmons, you, and myself hosting with Trey here. It's amazing how we were all doing these things, but didn't know somebody else was doing kind of some of the same things. Is that?
Yeah.
I mean,
And
it's
I can't believe how many people said that it was their mom. Like when
yeah,
he said that, we've had I would say a majority of the other people that said when it took them back to their childhood
yeah,
and they reflected it, a lot of people think it's your grandpa, your dad, your brother.
yeah.
But I can remember if most of the people saying it was their mom that got them started when they were younger.
Yeah,
So
because moms instinctually want their kids to do the thing that makes them happy. And I'm not saying dads don't. I'm just saying the moms are more often in the position to do that stuff. And my mom certainly was. She was, I'm lucky she was a stay-at-home mom that was really involved in all the stuff that we did, that both my brother and I did. And grateful for my dad that he made enough that was possible. And I think
Hmm.
that sort of situation is becoming less and less, and I think it's harder on kids because
Yeah,
they don't have a mom that'll drive them somewhere to go fishing.
yeah. I have.
well, I hate to say my favorite shows, Marty, but this one was a good one.
It's a
This
good.
was,
I've got a lot
this
of
was a
comments
good
on
one.
it. Oh, Jennifer says moms are cool.
Moms are cool.
That's awesome, Jennifer. No, really though, the youth program we run here, I have a lot of moms that bring the kids, and they stay out there and help me. They go, "What do you
Yeah,
need help with?" And I have some judging, some writing stuff down, some giving out stuff, and they all are eager to help, and they love that their kids are doing it. And it kind of cures some of the things they have to go through at home, I guess. I don't know, but they it is, and my mom was very supportive of my fishing as well. It's just that I got the bug with my dad on a trout fishing trip with a bunch of other guys.
yeah.
And, it just, you never know. But like I said, it's intriguing how this kayak thing, how we all were doing this in different areas of the country. And
I'll make this observation where I think it made it possible or facilitated it, and it does go to the advent and use of recreational kayaks that were not for fishing.
Right.
That people just in different parts figured out, hey, I know what I'm doing with that.
Yeah.
And I think without recreational kayaks, we don't have kayak fishing. We just don't. Like and we have very advanced fishing specific boats, and I got to, for sure be part of that development with my involvement with Wilderness Systems for 16 years as their pro staff, and worked with the different developers there. But it was like running into Randy Fugate, who had a Wilderness Systems Mallard that he put the Minn Kota on, and it was a wreck boat. They said, I'm fishing out of that thing. That'll work. So, and I think that happened in pockets all over.
Yeah, and that's for me. It was, I got out there because I had knee surgeries and I wanted to stay fit.
Right.
Started paddling, but then you go over the top of these fish in clear water. You're like, they're not even moving, and I was already an angler, and I'm like, I'm gonna get my pole. So I get my pole, and
I'm gonna make one more plug that is important, as we touched on it, but you're saying, hey, I'm sneaking up on them, I'm stealthy. All of that is magnified quite a bit with the inflatables.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I know that I was most excited about the inflatables for the shallow draft. Your average rotomolded boat needs between 5 and 9 inches to float through and not hit something. The inflatable, it's 2 1/8. Almost every inflatable that I've been on or created, I designed the ones for Innovative Sportsman.
Yeah.
2 1/8 inches when you start rubbing. And with a motor, if it's wet, you're jumping it. No problem.
Wow.
The stability is second to none, because the physics of compressed gas. You ever try to drown a beach ball? It's going to fight you. And if you have a platform like that, if you're standing on a rotomolded boat, it's going to go, oh, look, I have secondary stability. Look at that. That's awesome. The inflatable is like, I'm not moving.
Yeah.
No. Crazy stability.
Wow.
But the biggest thing is stealth.
Yeah.
So every time you scoot to the side in your seat and the seat goes creak, 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 that transfers to a hard piece of plastic and it resonates and it sends that noise out. And if you fish for redfish in shallow water, you see it. You fish for river smallmouth in summer clear, they spook. Yeah. Carp for sure spook. I mean, there's so many different species, and the ones that, if you're not in a clear shallow water fishery, that you don't know that you're spooking, but those striper out in the Chesapeake Bay, if you're banging around in a plastic boat, they're gone.
Yeah.
And I learned it. I learned how much of a stealth advantage it was following Corey Dreyer, which he might be an interesting one to get on. I actually did an interview with him on Lake Murray when he was pre-fishing for the KBF event there a couple years ago. And I did an interview with him that was a 10-year retrospective on kayak fishing tournaments. Talking about, all right, let me bring you the SD card and you plug it in and what it's evolved to. But I followed him there, and I was hanging back filming him catching fish, but I was like, why didn't he catch that one? Why didn't he catch that one? These are big fish. And I had him come back. I'm like, catch this one. And he's like, are you seeing big fish? He's like, because I only saw like 13s and 14s. I'm like, I'm looking at one that's easily 6. And he comes back and sees it and is like, oh my God, I missed that one. And it kept happening throughout the day, and it clicked. Like, I'm in an inflatable. There's less hull slap. I'm seeing them.
Yeah.
And him being in a hard boat, it is less stealthy.
Yeah.
So
wow, that's interesting. I think it's time to get an inflatable, Trey. It's time to get an inflatable.
I don't have the wind to blow one up.
You don't have to blow them. You get a little mechanical thing.
It's not a pull toy.
Oh, okay.
They either come with a pump or you get the electrical.
I would be doing an injustice here if I didn't give a shout out real quick to a couple people, man. I seen your identifier that you got sent in by Steve Billington, Trash Panda Outdoors. He showed me a picture. He's a good buddy of mine. That thing looks sweet, dude. He was the winner. Cool. He was the winner on our last one. Super cool about that. Another guy, man, that's been here every show. Look at that. Shout out to Trash Panda.
Yeah.
he is passionate about them things too.
Yeah.
Uh, Stacy Jordan, man, this guy has been on the show every night. Every time we've had a show, he's been on there. He's been commenting. He's
Yeah.
been in the video. I appreciate everybody that's on here. He's a name that has stuck out. That's, Steve Billington's been here. There's a few people that's been here on every one of the
Jennifer
shows.
Jennifer Solberg too.
Jennifer Solberg. And we had Jay Harmon tonight. Shout out to Jay.
Yeah.
The Jay the Shaker Harmon, bro. So man, it was a great show. I appreciate you, Jeff, and that's all I have.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And we don't have any prizes this week, but I got
We
something
don't.
maybe. So we'll see what happens.
Does Jeff want to give away a trailer for anybody?
Yeah. There we go.
I'm not there yet.
How about a boondock? I wanted that thing, Jeff.
Yeah.
How about like an autographed magazine cover of you? Autographed. That'd be.
Or just a jig. I just want a Jeff little
there
black
you go.
jig.
Yeah. One of those hand tied jigs.
Yeah, I'll give you a deer tail.
Right.
So anyway, well, we appreciate you being on, Jeff, and like I said, hopefully we can do some more in the future here with this. And when I see you at an event, maybe we can talk some more. Get some
Okay.
more information that way too. I know I've known. I mean, we've met each other before, and
Yep.
we know each other quite a long time. But we really do appreciate this, and it's gone really well. This whole thing's gone really well.
Yeah, it's a great thing that you're doing for the sport, and I appreciate you letting me be part of it and tell the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody has any questions, just put them in the comments, and we'll try to answer those. But in the meantime, let's all go fishing. I'm going to end.